Look, I'll apologize in advance if that's what it takes, but I kind of liked what I saw here. A lot of it anyway. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning from Philadelphia. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates, and if you're into perfection, then you're not going to be into Eagles 27, Steelers 13. There were some things shown by the visitors that were unsightly. There were some things shown by the visitors that went kind of well. But if you're of the belief, as I am and as I've been, that the Steelers are a team on the rise, you gotta understand that progress isn't linear. It's not convenient or smooth like the side of a triangle. It takes time. It takes bumps. It can even take on some big setbacks. I don't think this was one. And I haven't said this after all 4 of this team's losses through 14 games. I haven't. I did not like the Indianapolis game. I did not like the Cleveland game. And like I'll presume is true of everyone, I really did not like the offensive first quarter here. In particular, just the general vibe of the defense forcing 2 fumbles, recovering those fumbles, one of them deep in Philadelphia territory, and then coming away with a total of 3 points. That's indefensible. There's nowhere to go with that. There's no positive in that. But they get through that. They get into the second quarter. They at least begin to breathe a little bit offensively. They get into the second half. They pull within a score. And to my mind, they took over the momentum. You could feel it in that place. All those Sidney Crosby haters in there, they were getting tight. They didn't like it. And you could tell the Eagles themselves were getting that way. The Steelers are just boom, boom, booming right down the field. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, not too much of any one thing. And then it happened. Najee Harris fumbled. Pitch out. Perfect pitch out, by the way, by Russell Wilson. Right between the 2 and the 2. Dropped it. And it's one thing to point out that Najee hardly ever fumbles. It's quite another to point out that he probably never in his life fumbled as an unforced error, and that's what that was. Now, you can go ahead and be upset about the fumble. He certainly was, because it changed the momentum. It changed the game. It handed the Eagles all that momentum back. The Eagles grasped it and never let go. But I'd been urging everyone on this program all of last week, even as I was telling you that I didn't have a very good feel about this matchup and how the result would go for the Steelers, that you need to kind of take it in a broader context. You need to think bigger picture. As I said on the show Friday, for example, what you want to see, or at least what I wanted to see more than anything, was how do they stack up? Where are they in this NFL hierarchy? Are they a contender? Are they a pretender? Are they up there with the teams that I think we now all accept to be the class of the league, with the Bills and the Lions and I guess the Chiefs, depending on how Patrick Mahomes' health turns out after he hurt his leg yesterday and is going to be out for a while, probably against the Steelers too. Me, as I said, through all of those shows, I considered the Eagles to be one of the best, if not the best, the most complete team in the NFL. Now, there's a whole lot of people in Orchard Park, New York, who would disagree with that today, and not without cause. What the Bills did to the Lions yesterday was really, really impressive. But here in this city, what I witnessed were 2 teams that were competing really hard. And then after the first quarter, we're pretty much going head to head. And it was anybody's game until one mistake. One mistake, by the way, that's so rare, because it really is, for Najee. This is, look, I've criticized him over the years. I'm sure everyone's done that in different forms. But the one thing you can't take away from the dude is he just does not fumble. He didn't do it in college either. So if this is going to sound maybe a little bit strange to you, but hear me out. If there's one way that you would want to lose a game like that, yeah, it would be in a way that you're really sure it would never happen again, or probably would never happen again. And then when you graft onto that a couple of the calls that the referees clearly blew, and you should know if you're a regular listener, I don't make a habit of even bringing up the referees, but wow, did they misfire on a couple of these based on my conversations with the players and based on some video that I saw after covering the game. They just flat out whiffed. And coincidentally, in both of these cases, the calls went not against the Steelers, but violently against the Steelers, meaning they were really painful penalties to absorb. They were still in this. They were still there. They were missing, by the time you got to the second half, not one, not two, not three, but four regular defensive guys, starters. And they were still in it. They were missing their only real dynamic offensive weapon in George Pickens. And they were still in it. And they still arguably could have / should have won it had that wonderful looking drive not been blown up by the fumble. And TJ Watt, who's going to be fine, by the way, he told me afterward that the ankle was checked, x-rayed, and whatever else. And he just did not sound concerned when he and I spoke. He said that the best thing about this game is what we get out of it on film. And he's right. He's right. When the Eagles present you with an MVP candidate in Saquon Barkley and you reduce him to nothing, which is pretty much what the defense did, scarcely 2 yards a carry, you've learned something positive about yourself. And the same thing goes, arguably, doubly so, for the bad things that happen to you. Because the ones that were the result of execution mistakes, and especially the ones that were the result of just having a shortfall in a certain area that gets exposed, man, that's the NFL doing you a favor on a week-by-week basis. You can't simulate that on the South Side. You can't simulate it even virtually. You just can't. You have to be out on the field. You have to have somebody do it to you. That silly man coverage that the Steelers were using early that you saw Jalen Hurts pick apart, is a really bad idea. You live and learn from it. You get a little bit better from it. And you know what else you do within this? You don't accept it. You don't get satisfied with it. And I got to tell you, I talked to a lot of guys after this game, and not one of them wanted to hear hardly anything positive. Listen to Pat Freiermuth. Listen to this whole thing and listen to how I asked the question of him. And I purposely waited till all the microphones and cameras and other reporters were out of there so he'd feel maybe a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more candid. Listen to here's the exchange. I'm not to try to put a positive spin on this or anything here, but you were competitive with one of the class teams in the NFL here. I mean, how much can you take from that, like in a positive sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, we were able to do some things, but we want to win these games, but we'll figure it out and go into Baltimore next weekend and win the division.
Yeah, he turned that question upside down about halfway through his first sentence. He had no use for it. He was ticked off. A lot of them were ticked off. And the reason for that is they felt like they belonged on that field with that opponent. And that is not a bad thing. When we come back, J1Q.
This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar.
Today's J1Q comes from Tammy, who says, DK, what's going on with Jaylen Warren? Is he still hurt? If not, why was Cordero Patterson in the game in critical moments instead of him? I don't understand how the coaches use Jaylen. We bring him into the game, but it seems like we can't wait to get Najee Harris out there for some pitch outs. I had a feeling that pitch outs were going to get mentioned here. Is Jaylen in somebody's doghouse, or is there something else that I'm missing? You know, Tammy, when I hear your question, I'm nodding through the whole thing. I'm agreeing with you. And then I go and I look at the statistics. I'm going to read these numbers off to you. These are going to surprise you, I think. I think they'd surprise anybody. When it comes to rushing, this is just individual rushing for the Steelers in this game. A total of 56 yards on 17 carries. That's a 3.3 average. 8 of those 56 yards were single run by Justin Fields. So now we're talking about 16 carries for 48 yards. That's horrific. That's 3 yards. 3 yards a carry. Najee had 6 of those carries for 14 yards. Russell Wilson, 4 of those for 13 yards. Jaylen, 4 of those for 12 yards. And Cordero, 2 of them for 9. Not one run went longer than Fields' 8 yards. Now, I don't want to make today's episode a told you so thing or whatever, but the one thing that I felt pretty sure about was that the Steelers weren't going to be able to run the ball on these guys. I felt that they were going to try, and that they were going to try and try and try again, but they ended up with virtually nothing. And it's hard to overcome that. Calvin Austin with 5 catches for 65 yards. Pat Freiermuth with 3 catches for 22 yards and the lone touchdown. But that's it. Everybody else just had 1 or none. It was going to be a big, big challenge against these guys. And that's why I'm impressed that the Steelers were able to put together anything offensively. But they did, and they kept getting better through the game. And they, I'm going to say it again, they were marching down the field, and everybody was feeling it. Don't tell me you weren't. Until that fumble hit. That's a very, very, very good defensive team, especially up front. So was Jaylen not utilized because of doghouse this or injury that? I can tell you he's not in anybody's doghouse, and I can definitely tell you he's not hurt. I don't know what to say beyond that, because I don't think anything had anything to do with let's not use Jaylen. They just weren't on the field very much. The time of possession that the Eagles put together, and now we're talking about the other side of the football, it's close to 40 minutes. Part of that was because the Steelers' defense wasn't doing enough to get them off the field until it was too late, meaning they were already in the red zone, settled for a field goal or whatever. But the fact that I was nodding, and believe me, it's a fact, I was nodding as I read your question, has me thinking that it sure would be nice if there were some flexibility to the choices being made, in particular on offense. And that means personnel choices. That means schematic choices. You can't replace George, so I'm not being a dope here. But you can make a conscious decision to choose Mike Williams for your deep routes rather than Van Jefferson. You can make a conscious decision, yet again referencing something that I pleaded about late last week, and that was to make sure that you don't just blindly run through the middle. If you have the option to go outside with Jaylen, not Najee, then go ahead and seize that. Throw the Eagles something they wouldn't be used to seeing, certainly not on film from the Steelers. Want a positive example? Very early in the game, first series, Russ threw over to his left to Freiermuth. Didn't get much, like 2 yards. But it was exactly that play that I'd been talking about on this show for months now. They practiced the heck out of that through camp and preseason and everything else here. They didn't need to stop it just because the Eagles sniffed that one out, and boy, did they ever. Good group of linebackers. They needed to keep trying things that would pry the defensive front apart. Remember the little touch pass that Russ made to Calvin Austin? Not a deep ball, not the one, the flea flicker or whatever, although that was really cool unto itself. Just a little thing over the middle. And Cal turns around and just kind of squirts forward for the first down. Do you remember that one too? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It developed quickly. It didn't give any time for your offensive line to be a factor one way or the other. It just moved the football. And it moved their eyes. It kept them guessing at least a little bit instead of just, we're bigger than you and we're stronger than you and we're going to go through you. No. In this case, you weren't going to be that. Everyone should have known that. The Eagles have been the Eagles for a while now. They're not new at this. So yeah, there was a lot everyone, including the coaches, could learn from this. I appreciate the question, Tammy. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers, and we'll be back with another one of these tomorrow. Make sure you don't miss today's double shot of Steelers coming your way, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time.